The penultimate episode of Loki is now streaming on Disney Plus, and it might have just cemented this show as the best Marvel show to date. This is officially God tier, so let's talk about Loki. After being pruned and meeting even more variants of him, Loki tries to understand what he's at, what is going on, while the TVA, Ravonna, and Sylvie try to understand what is actually happening behind the timekeepers. And before I get going with my review, there will be spoilers in this video. There always are. You have to watch the latest episode of Loki. It's now streaming. Go watch it. Come back and let me know your thoughts on this episode, on the show in general. Look, this entire episode is packed with visual references, literal references to events in the comic book, so I'm sure I'll miss some stuff. So let me know anything I miss in the comments, start the conversation, and while you're down there, consider clicking the subscribe button. If you like these Loki reviews, it does wonders to get the content out there, and you'll always be aware of whenever there's more great content that I put out. This episode starts and just goes for it. It doesn't waste any time. Our Loki meets classic kid, alligator, and boastful Loki. They tell him what is going on, what this place is, what the giant purple cloud that is not Galactus from the Fantastic Four movies is up there. It looks like a mix between the fog creatures from Raya and the Last Dragon and the Fold from Shadow and Bone, which two references I really appreciate, whether they were intentional or not. And turns out this big living giant cloud is called Goliath, and it's basically here to eat the things that the TVA throws away. And all the Lokis are here after they were captured by the TVA and were pruned. And we get sent back to the TVA, and there's a conversation between Ravonna and Sylvie. And I really like what happens here. I really like how Ravonna explains how the actual deleting of timelines works. It's very much like what happens to matter in our world. Nothing is ever truly erased. It just transforms into something else. So these variants, these branch timelines that shouldn't exist, they just get sent up into the end of time, into the void in time before anything else can happen, where nothing else can happen, and they just get erased there. This is a great explanation. It puts a lot of things that we've learned so far on this show into perspective, and it actually is something logical that we can grasp in our understanding of things. All this wacky stuff of time travel and all that doesn't exist, unfortunately. But the fact that they logically make it work like things work in our real world is actually really interesting. And I really like where things go, because Ravonna still seems like she's holding back, still seems like she's not telling us everything she knows. She asks for missed minutes, for files about the end of time, and in the meanwhile more TVA agents come in, and Sylvie finds herself trapped with Ravonna and the other TVA agents. They were about to make a deal, but now not so much anymore because Ravonna has got the edge, and Sylvie prunes herself, taking a chance, which I like, not only on herself, but on Loki. This is great evolution, this is great character progression, it's a great change in character, and that is basically the main theme of this episode, and we'll talk about more of that as we get going. Back at the end of time, our Loki is with his variants back at their hideout, and they're talking about what they did in his life. The kid Loki actually killed Thor in his timeline, and that's the Nexus event that made the TVA go get him, and then classic Loki actually survived the Thanos invading the Asgardian ship after Ragnarok, and he ran away until he got so lonely out in the universe that he went on to fight his brother. And as soon as he decided to do that, TVA got to him. The boastful Loki killed Captain America, killed Iron Man. By the way, killing Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, all these things are actual stuff that happened in the comics. Even Alligator Loki has some quips about him. He doesn't talk, but the other Lokis understand him. I really like the dynamics we have here. By the way, the way this episode just begins. I haven't talked about the cinematography in Loki. This is by far, pick any episode of Loki, it's the best cinematography these shows so far have had, and they have all had great cinematography, but Loki is just this wonder going through the offices of the TVA, down into the Timekeeper's chamber, then into the end of time where Loki is meeting his variants. Just phenomenally shot stuff. This entire episode, phenomenally shot in general. The variants of Loki are just coasting back because they've accepted that all they have to do, all they gotta do, all they can do in this end of time is just survive, just avoid the giant Alliance thing, and they'll be fine, they'll be good. But Loki is not settled for that. Loki wants to go back to the TVA, he wants to go back to Sylvie, he wants to try to find a way out, and the others laugh at him, and he tries to go out, and as soon as he goes out, which, by the way, when they go into their hideout, you see the camera going down through the earth to get to the actual hideout, and there's Mjolnir bearing the descent, and a small insect-sized Thor trapped in a flask trying to get out to get Mjolnir, which is really funny. And as Loki tries to get out, there's more Lokis. Everyone in here at the end of time is a Loki, and we have President Loki, also played by Tom Hiddleston. That turns out he had boastful Loki infiltrate this small group so President Loki could come in and still sit in the throne. And so he betrays boastful Loki, but turns out every other Loki around President Loki betrays him. An all-out fight starts with a very synth 80s style Ragnarok-y score to it, and the whole fight just feels very Ragnarok-y to it, so it was a great fit. Alligator Loki bites the hand off of President Loki, and he just yells out like a little girl. It's honestly, this stuff, great action, great character stuff, great comedy, great, just everything is great, goddammit. And soon enough, as Kid, Alligator, Classic, and main Loki, I guess we'll call them, they go out and they start to devise a plan. Hey, let's go to Alliance because it's the only thing that we haven't tried that we can do. And in the meanwhile, Sylvie finds herself at the end of time. She's being chased by Alliance. She tries to enchant him and she can get something out of him for a quick second. Soon enough, she has to run away, but she is found by a pizza car that turns out Mobius is driving. Now, two things about Mobius catching Sylvie I really like. Finally, quick confirmation that Mobius is alive. Yes, he was also sent into the end of time. And Sylvie gets in the car, they run away. Two things about this that one thing is really great. I thought that even though it looks nothing like it, it might be a reference to Pixar's pizza truck. The other thing is that they wasted a great opportunity at having Owen Wilson drive a red race car with the number 95 on it. It's right there, guys. And soon enough, Sylvie and Mobius meet Loki and his variants, and they devise a plan. So Loki's plan was to try and kill Alliance, because if it's a living creature, if it's a shark, if it leaves, it dies. If it bleeds, we can kill it. That's what Arnold would say if he was a Loki variant, and I actually want to see now that thought has popped into my head. But Sylvie thinks that's stupid, of course, and everyone agrees with her. Her idea is to enchant Alliance because she believes he's just a guard dog for who or what or however many people are actually behind the TVA, and he just doesn't let people get past him. So their plan now is to enchant Alliance. They give the Tempad that Sylvie stole earlier from Ravonna. She didn't steal it, Ravonna gave it to her. And Kid, Loki, Alligator, and Classic go on their merry way while Sylvie and Loki go to try and enchant Alliance, and Mobius gets back to the TVA. He does go, we don't see anything else, there's no post-credit scene this week, so we gotta wait until the finale and see whatever happens there. But before this goes down, we get back to the TVA, and immediately a more suspicious scene comes in with Ravonna interrogating B-15, which I thought was going to go another way completely, because she gets into the interrogation room, she tells the TVA agents to leave us, and she was the only one in the room. So I was like, whoa, leave us who? We're going to get asked. We didn't. It was an interrogation of B-15. And you talk about what does Sylvie want? What does she need? What is her motivation behind all of this? And the most interesting thing that I got from this scene is that it at least confirmed that Ravonna doesn't actually know what's happening. She doesn't actually know who is behind the TVA, what is behind the TVA, but she still believes in the TVA's mission. She has been so indoctrinated into this that her core beliefs are not being shattered because of this, despite everything that has been happening. And so she asks Miss Minutes about everything from the founding of the TVA to the beginning of time, everything from the beginning that she can get her hands on, and Miss Minutes starts to take care of that. And so Loki and Sylvie are right in front of Alioth. Sylvie's going to start to enchant it while Loki tries to create a distraction, and he does it. It's a really cool scene. Again, phenomenal cinematography. The score is just booming. All the choir keys are there. Fucking love choir scores. It's not working. Loki is not distracting Alioth enough. He's still going towards Sylvie. And classic Loki, Richard E. Grant, comes in and he generates an illusion of fucking Asgard to distract Alioth. One of the most beautiful things I have ever seen being brought to life. As a fan of the comics, this is just honey to me. It's honey to the eyes, to the ears, to everything. I never thought I'd be describing this stuff happening, from the classic costume to everything else. It's just phenomenal. Loki and Sylvie team up. They grab each other's hands and they had a really interesting conversation earlier about being lonely, about being able to change, and I really like how that connects to every Loki, because the fact that they are bad people, the fact that they are evil, the fact that they are villains, what if they want to change that? They can't, because it's supposedly written that they gotta be bad. I think it's really interesting. Again, I said this last week, but how this show does all this wacky, cool, spectacular fantasy stuff, but really has a compelling core. It really has compelling foundations and interesting themes to talk about it and discuss while doing this awesome thing that we love to see. So classic Loki ends up sacrificing himself as Alioth eats the entire Asgard illusion and ends up eating him. And finally, Loki and Sylvie are able to together enchant Alioth. Loki unlocks his enchanting powers just earlier as classic Loki was raising Asgard from the ground. They realized we're more powerful than we actually know. And because Sylvie and Loki are the same, she decides, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to need your help for us to enchant this thing. Together they do it, and we finally see Alioth opening up, turning green. Again, great cinematography, great color change, and we see a castle behind Alioth. Now, I know we're all thinking Kang the Conqueror. I'm thinking Kang the Conqueror. Maybe it will be Kang the Conqueror, maybe it will be someone else who's spectacular, maybe it will be an underwhelming reveal. That castle, however, looks a lot like Doctor Doom's castle in Latveria. That's all I'm saying. That's, it's what it looked like to me. So I'm not saying that makes sense. I'm not saying that's what I want to see, but I'm saying that's what it looked like. This show continues to not surprise me in general, because I already expect it to be good. It surprises me with the things that happen, the twists and turns, but it always exceeds my expectations. This show is doing something phenomenal with its writing. The score is sensational, the directing, the cinematography, the acting, those small little moments of interactions between characters are so sweet, are so compelling, are so emotional. The conversation between Loki and Sylvie, the conversation with Kid Loki and classic Loki with Mobius, the hug that Loki gives Mobius when he goes away back into the TVA. All this is such great stuff. You can really tell by just watching that a lot of care went not only into this fantastic world building, the TVA, but these characters, the core things that make this show, these stories in general work, is here. And it's at an all-time peak right now, unless they really fuck it up next week in the finale. This is up there, and I mean really up there. This is in the upper echelon of MCU properties, of MCU movies and series, and how it's going to affect the future. I cannot wait to see it. This not only makes me excited for this show, for season 2 that we know we're getting, for whatever comes next, because the MCU is going all crazy now, and I cannot wait to see the rest. Episode 5, I'm repeating myself, but it might be the new best episode of this show, because so far nothing has truly disappointed me here. I'm loving what this show is doing, I'm loving how it's doing it, and it has just peaked itself once more. And those are my thoughts on Loki episode 5. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Start the conversation. It's always the most important part. Did you love this episode as much as I do? Not as much as I do, even more than I did. Let me know all of that. And if you've watched the video this far, consider clicking the subscribe button. You're my variant. I know how you work. We're the same. You gotta subscribe, because I would subscribe to myself. Thank you so much for watching. You are the best. Later today, my review of Fear Street Part 2 1978 is dropping, as well as my review for Black Widow, and I'll be back very soon, and I cannot wait for next week to talk more Loki. So until the next one, love each other and love the movies.